Hello and welcome to Meet Our Success Stories podcast. I'm host and coach Amanda Leah, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner and an advocate for the carnivore diet. She's amazing at debunking nutritional misinformation, and she empowers her clients and followers to get to the root cause of their health challenges while creating sustainable solutions. We're so happy you're here to tell us your diet success story, Judy Cho.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Judy Cho. I am also known as Nutrition with Judy, and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. I serve clients basically that are meat-based and that are trying to get to root cause healing. And I'm trying to give back on social media platforms by also helping others try to get to their root cause healing as well.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Well, let's get started. Can you share about your diet and health before you began this way of eating?
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and then I went to Berkeley, California. So very liberal, very plant-based, very anti-meat. And so, I'm 5'8", and so as an Asian, I'm pretty tall compared to other Asians. And then I also wasn't super dainty like, a lot of Asians. And I could totally say this because I'm Asian. But so I always wanted to lose like the last 10 pounds, the last, 15 pounds. And then I found, this plant-based diet. So, actually, I did a lemon detox. So it's called the Master Cleanse. And then that doctor is very anti-meat. And so I read his book and I was like, it makes sense. This meat is putrefying in my gut and, it's not natural. And so I'm going to give up meat. And so after 10 days of doing the Master Cleanse, I stopped eating meat. And then that kind of, that experiment lasted for about 12 years. And so I became plant-based. I had occasional fish, but in general, I was eating a ton of salads, lots of carbohydrates in terms of like breads and grains. And one thing I noticed is my mental health just started going down the drain. So I became plant-based right after, or maybe like mid college. And then I started having really bad low moods. Another thing is I started getting triggered because I was always hungry. And so I'd end up, starving most of the day, eating just plants and very, very low fat. So I would use mustard as a dressing instead of any other dressing because I wanted to be really lean. And I got really lean, but my mental health suffered. So I started having an eating disorder. So I didn't know it, but for some reason I would, eat one cookie and then it was, an item off my kind of plan of eating. And then I would end up eating the whole box. And I didn't understand what binging was until I went to a therapist and they're like, you have an eating disorder, you are binging. And that was the first time I ever heard of it. And so that's when I realized that I had an eating disorder. And then as I was more plant-based, I would get the kind of the compliments like, oh my gosh, you look so good. You're plant-based. Wow, you're doing so good for your body. And then I wanted to keep it up. So then I started purging. So I used different mechanisms of, whether it's like excessive exercising, excessive not eating, and just other kind of mechanisms. Then I just started getting into this really unhealthy behavior of, restriction and overeating. And it was just really, really unhealthy. Then I had, I got married and I had a kid, and I think it was during the, when I was breastfeeding at 6 months and I wasn't really eating well. I was still plant-based and I had mastitis from breastfeeding. And then I had to get on antibiotics and my memory got wiped out. I don't remember what happened. I really attribute to the fact that I probably didn't have a lot of good gut bugs in my system. And then the antibiotics wiped out the rest. And I wasn't sleeping during that time. I was highly stressed. I honestly would tell my husband, like, every day is like a hamster wheel. I don't want to wake up sometimes. Like I was really severely depressed and I didn't even know it. And I thought this was just new being a mom. And so when my memory got wiped out, finally, my family took me to the hospital, to the mental hospital. And I was put on antipsychotics to get my memory back. I was put on antidepressants and I was forced to stop nursing. And the thing is, I don't even remember how it happened. I kind of woke up from this dream and they just told me that I had stopped nursing. And they told me every day I'd ask about my son and like, where's my son? Because I need to nurse him. And they'd be like, you stopped breastfeeding. And then like, every day they said I would go through this emotional pain and like, I don't even remember it, but they said every day for like the 2 weeks I was in the hospital, that I would go through. You know, it was like Groundhog's Day almost. And yeah, so, you know, that was when I started realizing like I need to get my health together. You know, the doctor in that hospital recommended I go to outpatient care for eating disorders, and I did. So my son was with my mom, and, you know, I failed. Like in my mind, you know, the worst fear is that you as a mom are not a good mom. And at 6 months, my son was taken away from me, or, you know, voluntarily taken away from me. I was forced to stop nursing, and I was in a facility taking care of myself, figuring out, why am I using an eating disorder? Why am I using food as to get healing? But then in there, and I learned so many good therapeutic behavior, you know, like cognitive behavior, these tools to kind of figure out, is this for somebody else or is this for my own self-care? So all of those things are really good, but they would have meals every day, and it was riddled with sugar. So if there were a lot of anorexics there, so if you wouldn't eat your meal after 2 meals, they would force you in a room and they would feed you Ensure. And we thought that was, yeah. And you could not leave the room until you finished that drink. And, you know, their goal was to make you not fear foods. And so a lot of times my challenge food would be a cupcake. And if I didn't eat it, then they would give me some of the Ensure to make up the nutrients. And they never taught you that, hey, maybe sugar is addictive. And so I left there, and I healed a lot. So mental health helped a lot. But as I left, like I noticed every once in a while I would still go back to kind of purging. And so eventually I found keto, and I realized it helped a lot. But that whole like 20 grams of allowance, or a certain amount of grams of allowance plus sweeteners, is what really got me to keep going back to sugar. And then I realized how addictive it is. And so then I heard of the carnivore diet, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try it for 2 weeks. I have a really highly stressful time coming up. Let me just try it. And then it kind of stuck, and I've been doing it for 2.5 years. You know, the first year wasn't super easy. There were times where I'd kind of fall back on keto, but now, I mean, it's been 2.5 years, and I don't struggle with sugar. I don't struggle with cravings. My husband has junk food in the house, and it doesn't even look like food to me because I abstain from it. I look at it and it's a non-food, so I don't even crave it. I don't question eating it. My moods are really stable. I'm off all antidepressants, and I can actually tear up like you just saw, which I was not able to do when I was on antidepressants. My mood was really muted. And, you know, now, I mean, I had a really good job prior to all of this, but I realized this is kind of my purpose. Like I used to really get mad at God. Like, why out of all the diseases did you give me an eating disorder, right? If I was addicted to drugs or alcohol, I could just abstain fully and never have to deal with it again. But every time I put food in my mouth, I have to struggle with am I going to be clean? Am I going to be sober? Am I going to be good and not eat these foods that then trigger me off plan? But now I get it, right? So now I get that as a kind of giving back to the community, I had a struggle like that to really understand the darkness of what it is to binge, right? I used to go to multiple stores in the middle of the night and just pretend that I'm picking up food for everybody. Or if the clerk were like, wow, you're having a party today, and it was just for me to go on a binge, and I would have to shamelessly like lie and go, yeah, we're having a huge party right now. And it was, you know, and it's just like having to sit with that is just so traumatizing. And I really think if you don't go through it, you can't understand the depths of the pain. And so, you know, when people are like, just stop eating or go to the gym or eat less or eat more, it's just, they don't get it. And I feel like now I understand why I went through that, why I studied psychology, why I was in business and I was making graphics, right? So it kind of all kind of came together. And yeah, now I just want to give back because it's completely given me my life back. There were so many times like I didn't want to live anymore because life was so hard. And like, I don't go through that now. And like, sorry. But life is good now. And you just need to change your diet and you can actually have a chance at life again. And if I can scream it at the mountaintops, I will now. So yeah.
Thank God. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I'm right here with you.
Oh,
Your
sorry.
story is so touching. I can't. I'm so grateful that you found Carnivory and that you're having an impact. But wow, thank you for sharing that powerful beginning part to your journey. Holy wow, what a relief you must feel. So, okay, please tell us about what is it like to implement Carnivory for you now? What is that?
Yeah.
Like?
Yeah, so initially I was following kind of what the veterans and what anecdotal stories about like the 2 pounds a day and stuff, but honestly, it didn't work for me. So I did it for a good 6 months, and then I noticed like my blood sugars were really peaking. I do one meal a day and try to do a lot of fasting, and I felt really tired, low energy after a while, and so I cut back, and so I ended up splitting my meals. I think it makes more sense for digestive health anyway. If you inundate your gut with so much food at once, it's a lot of taxation on the body. So I think ideally doing 2 meals a day is better, especially for gut health. Um, and then also it kind of regulates like how much you need to eat in a meal. So I think a lot of people, when they go carnivore, they feel like they can binge on a meal and then compensate with the fast. But I don't know if that's ideal, right? That's kind of band-aid healing. And so I would recommend doing root cause healing. And so I can go to a restaurant with my husband now when I used to not be able to, because I would feel like I need to eat 2 pounds. And so I would eat before and then eat another meal with him. But now I can just go and order like a normal size steak and feel, comforted by that. And then, just kind of go on with my day knowing that I'm going to have another meal later. And I'm no longer using band-aids of I need to be utterly full before, I can like stop eating. And yeah, so I typically eat about a pound and sometimes a pound and a half in a day. I eat higher fat because I just do better. I feel like being in a ketogenic state on a carnivore diet just helps me so much more. My moods are super stable. So I eat high fat. I incorporate organ meats, not too often, but I'm not a big fan of beef liver, so I rarely eat it, but I eat some chicken liver. We make pâtés with it and it tastes good. I do like cod liver. I'll do salmon roe. So that's kind of how I get that nose to tail type of eating. But in general, I eat just, we buy meats from the farm, but we also just buy store like ribeyes. I'm not going to buy the grass fed. I just can't afford it. And I think it's a balance, right? So if you're eating mostly meat based, your body's already healing. I think it can kind of handle some of the toxins that may be in some of the, more market sold meats. But yeah, I think I just eat 2 meals a day, probably have about a pound and a half, and then high fat. So I probably sit around the 75% fat in terms of total calories.
That's great. And so where are you in terms of where do you stand or fall in terms of salt and supplements and, plant foods? I mean, simple things like coffee, never mind all the way to reintroduction of plant foods.
Yeah, so salt, I see a lot of carnivores struggle with electrolytes. I really think it might be that they're just using all this potassium and magnesium supplementing and not letting the body kind of find its own rhythm. So for all my clients that are on electrolytes, I recommend them first start with like Soleil water. It's where you use like pink salt, or you could use red mint salt. Let it kind of saturate the water, and then drink that in the morning, and then get off all the electrolytes. So that's a kind of ton of salt in the beginning, and then as your electrolytes kind of balance out, then you could just start drinking maybe a little bit of salt and in the water, and that's it. And then over time, just salt your meats, and you should be fine. I think that you shouldn't fear salt. Salt is, what helps you to not be insulin resistant. It's used for so many mechanisms in the body. It's a big electrolyte. And the thing is, there is a salt potassium pump in the body. And if you are using too much potassium, if your cells feel there's too much potassium, there's like a balance. It'll have to take in more salt. If you're super stressed, your body may hold on to more salt. So again, get to root cause healing, but focus on salt. Potassium, if you overdo it, you can risk you can risk death actually. And so I almost never recommend potassium. And then in terms of magnesium, I recommend using a magnesium spray because it bypasses the digestive system and it goes straight into your skin, into your blood. And so if you struggle with like leg cramps in the middle of the night, just use magnesium. You could use like 2 to 6 sprays on your leg. And I hear of really no one having leg cramps after that. But other than that, I don't think you should be supplementing electrolytes. You should let your body find its own rhythm. And I have not seen other people suffer if you just use a little bit of salt and use magnesium spray and then not even take magnesium supplements. I have clients that take like the magnesium and potassium, and there's like one day of not taking it, then they get the leg cramps or they feel really, really fatigued. And I think it's because they're not allowing their body to find their own homeostasis. In terms of supplements, So I believe in healing supplements. So when you first start, if you need a little bit of gut support, then so be it. But over time, and if like, for example, if you don't consume fish, I think taking a fish oil supplement can be ideal. Obviously, trust your resource. But in general, as you heal and you are on a meat-based diet, like I rarely take supplements. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should take some organ supplements, and I have some that I was given for free. So then I'll take that. But I mean, do I really think I need it? I don't think so. But I just take it because, hey, it's there. But in the beginning, I had to take digestive supports. I mean, I didn't eat meat for 12 years. So my gut was like, what is this meat, right? So I had to take I took some ox bile, digestive enzymes, HCl, and now I don't take any of it. So before, if I didn't eat it, I'd have heartburn, and I was taking like 5 HCl pills at a time, but now I take none. And so I think if you focus on healing in the beginning, then afterward, you don't really need to take everything. And then you should really get all the nutrients from your meat. Oh, in terms of plants, I don't really consume plants. I don't feel I've like dabbled in trying the kimchi, the plants, but I don't feel as well. So when I want to feel my best, I kind of remove dairy. I notice dairy makes me feel bloated. Sometimes I'll get like a pimple or two here and there if I eat too much dairy. And my stools get really constipated, but in general, so if I want to feel my best, I just stick to meat. I limit the dairy, and I limit, and I don't eat plants.
That makes perfect sense. That sounds great. It sounds like you're in a really good place to be able to have your gut get to the point where you're able to let go of the HCl, let go of all of that, but using it at first to help you get there. Yeah. Really great. It's a very healthy and sustainable way of eating.
Yeah, I used to take bone broth in the beginning and I'd have to run to the toilet. And now I can eat like 90% fat. And I was telling this to my husband the other day because I was taking no digestive enzymes. And I'm like, this is my true test of if my gut is healed. And so I ate just bone marrow by itself, and it's like 90% fat. And I had the bone broth with it. I didn't even, scoop out the tallow on top, and I had no issues. And I was like, yay, like my gut's healing, right? So I didn't have the loose stools that I used to always have. So yeah, that's
amazing. I love that. I love how you talk about how to look at the signs in your body to understand if your gut's really healed, not just seeing major changes in your gut, but to actually know if it's really healed is being able to maintain and manage high fat or anything else that you
think. And I also do that because I want my kids to learn. So my kids understand that sugar is bad, but I don't want them to think it's bad. So they know it's not ideal, right? So I don't want them to have an eating disorder because I totally understand how dark of a disease that is. And I don't want to demonize it, but I want them to know that it's less than, right? So that's why I talk about symptoms so much with them so that they can understand. And so that if in the future, if they are, partying with their friends and they drink like beer and bread and pizza and I don't know what else, but if they feel less than, they'll be very aware of the symptoms because I've talked their whole life about it. And so that's why I talk about symptoms all the time. So if they see floating poo, they're like, Mom, my poo's floating. And I go, yeah, you didn't digest your fat. And they know these things at the age of 4, right? Because it's so important. So when they're older and they're not feeling well, they know that these things are the case, right? So I think that's why I talk about it a lot.
That is so awesome. I love that so much, especially the educational piece for your kids. That's just so good. So, okay, so tell us more about that. What is the impact on your children or anything else in your life that this way of eating has had on you overall?
Yeah. So when I met my husband, I was plant-based. So he was okay with the whole keto thing. And then, cause I was doing plant-based keto. And then when I started, trying carnivore, he wasn't a fan. And then, I think a few months in, or maybe it was a year in, but he saw my stable moods and he says I'm 180-degree different. And so now he's a big fan. He's like, you know what? You are a completely different person. Before I used to have to read signs like, okay, what mood am I getting of Judy, right? Like one day I can act a certain way and it'd be fine. And another day you would bite my head off basically. So I don't act like that, right? And thank God I've kind of healed this before my kids are older, because then before I used to like scream all the time and, just very, very volatile. And now they have a mom that's present. So all of these things, it's like a mom that's enjoying life and can take time and just enjoy and not be like, okay, what am I going to eat today? What did I eat today that I can have tonight? Right. Being just flooded with all this obsession over foods and what I can and cannot eat. I don't think about those things anymore. And I could really be present with my kids and teach them things about life that really matters and not just be focused on food. So those things are huge. And then my kids' diet has completely changed. So when I was plant-based, my husband used to go, would you be okay if our kids were plant-based? And I was like, of course, right? So I would love for my kids not to eat meat. It's so bad for them and all these things. And, my oldest son, for maybe the first year and a half to 2 years, he didn't really eat much meat, but now they are very meat heavy. So we can go, just to give you perspective, they probably eat on average about 0.75 pounds of meat a day. We can go to like In-N-Out or a McDonald's and they can eat like probably like 6 or 7 patties with a little bit of cheese. They eat a lot of meat, and it actually is getting costly going to restaurants with them because, they eat more meat probably than the average person individually. And, one of them likes chicken liver pate, so he'll eat a lot. The other one can do the salmon roe. So it's good. I'm teaching them a lot. I show them whenever so sometimes I make them like coconut flour muffins. And I show them like, look at this is how much butter I use or oil. But if you think about all the packaged ones, they use those soybean oil and canola oil. And I've shown them videos of how they make the canola oil and how toxic it is. And so now they know when they eat the muffin in the packages, like it has all these toxins, right? So, it's just an educating, but it's also, I know that I'm nourishing them. We drive to the farm once a month and we buy all this raw milk because raw milk has been shown to increase height in kids, right? My kids are really healthy. They rarely ever get sick. When my first started preschool, when he was 3, he got like every sickness that was there. And then now like they're never sick. I think they get sick obviously they get a little bit of sniffles, but in general, they are rarely ever sick. They're very, very strong kids. They eat a lot and they don't have these crazy moods that I remember my oldest son having when he was younger. And I think they don't have the sugar dip, right? I think at most they have maybe 50 grams of sugar a day. And sometimes I allow them, you want a lollipop? Well, this one at least doesn't have the color food dye, but here's like a balance, right? Because again, I'm very mindful of eating disorders. So I allow them to sometimes pick like a junk food and I'm okay with it, but it's just in moderation.
That's amazing. Wow. What a blessing. It's great for them. And you must feel relieved to know that at least they've got the education that,
Yes.
well, unfortunately, people are not getting elsewhere generally.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents, they were immigrants. They moved here in the 70s and they saw TV dinners, right? And they're like, what a perfect meal, right? So I grew up eating TV dinners for some of my meals because they're like, it has the vegetable, right? The starch, the meat, and as dessert. Perfect meal. It's economical. And they didn't know any better, right? So they were told that, these fat-free milks and the orange juice every morning is so good for us, and the oatmeal and the cereal. So I grew up eating a ton of cereal, tons of oatmeal, thinking it's good. And even I was feeding my youngest at 2 oatmeal, or my oldest at 2 oatmeal, because, it's supposed to be really good for you, whole grains, right? And yeah. So
heart healthy, isn't it?
Yeah, heart healthy. There you go. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. And margarine. I don't think I ever had butter in my house until I became carnivore because I thought margarine was what you're supposed to have. Crazy, right? But so great. It's been so great hearing everything. Before we let you go, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Yes.
Please.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was just going to tell you guys about the Carnivore Cure book. Great. So, it's coming out December 2nd. And, when I first started Carnivore 2.5 years ago, there was no one making graphics. So, ShawnBaker was obviously sharing his whole journey and healing, and it was really good. But, I would see all these graphics for keto, like if you have keto flu, take this, or here's the keto pyramid, but it's like, where's the carnivore stuff? And there wasn't. And I just started making, I was like, well, I need it for myself. So maybe I can help others by doing this. And then it kind of grew from there. And then I noticed as I was just in the community that I would get the same questions over and over, right? So for me now, it's obvious how to manage my electrolytes or how much salt or how much meat to eat. But when you're brand new, and I forget, right? you're completely lost. So you think the normal 4 ounces of meat is normal in a meal, but it's not enough when you're eating only meat based, right? So these are the kind of discussions that I kept having, and the fear of fiber and vitamin C and cholesterol. And so I just started collecting all my thoughts into a book, because I thought, not everyone can work with me. And so if you have my book, if you implement everything in it, or like learn from it and then dig deeper into all the other science, the other areas about like hormones and whatever it is, then you can find your own root cause healing possibly, and get your own personalized carnivore to have it work for you. And so this book took a year in the making, lots of graphics, lots of information. It's all in color. I just really wanted to put a resource out there that can help people, and that can also further the carnivore movement. I mean, you guys all heard my story. Like, I've healed so much, and I hate that people are still on antidepressants, on medication, like even like PPIs that ruin your gut health, right? These are all band-aids that actually are more toxic to the body than anything. And so if I can spread the message more that you can heal and get your life back, that affects families and people in the community, and we can be a happier community, right? So I really felt like, for everything I've kind of been through, I just thought this was my way of giving back. And so I hope that it could help people that have been carnivore for a long time find their personalized carnivore. So if things aren't working a little bit, maybe you can fine tune it. And then for people that are confused or worried about the vitamin C, fiber, and all those other nuances, whether it's for the environment, for gut health, whether it's for your hormones and your stress, sleep, fasting, all of those things, it's all kind of touched in there. And then I give resources of looking into areas more deeply. And so then you don't have to worry about eating this way, and you have the knowledge enough that if someone questions your diet, no, you're wrong. And I know that I'm right. And here's all the context. You could take the book to your thyroid doctor and be like, what about this? What about that? Right. There's all these free bonuses that come with it too. So there's about, I think, like 15 of them. One, like, for example, is the blood work that you might want to get while you're a carnivore. Detox supports, how you want to feed your baby when you're pregnant, when you have your first baby, and then like while you're nursing. They're all bonuses outside of the book. The book is already like 460 pages. So they're all bonuses, but they're all free once you get the book.
Wow, what an amazing resource. I cannot wait to dig into that. And I have to attest that when I became carnivore almost 2 years ago, I was looking for graphics, and I found graphics, and I still use them to this day. And they have Nutrition with Judy in the watermark. So I'm very clear that, no, thank you. It's a big deal. So I look forward to seeing all the graphics, and it just sounds like an amazing resource. So we're going to make sure at the bottom in the show notes to let everybody know, where they can follow up with you, so the audience has your bio and links. But I just wanted to say again, like, what a powerful, well-spoken story. Thank you so much for sharing your diet success story with us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me, Amanda.
Thank you. Take care, Judy Cho.
Okay, you too.